So welcome everyone. My name is Rick Miller. I'm teaching the InDesign Resume Workshop, and I also teach the Photoshop class, the InDesign class, and the Premiere Pro class. And before I came on to USC teaching, I used to work at Adobe for 7 years. My name's on the credit screens for Premiere Pro as well as Photoshop. So, since the majority of you are brand new to InDesign, what is InDesign? So InDesign is the leading page design and layout tool set. It lets us work across desktop and mobile devices to create, pre-flight, and publish everything from printed books, brochures, to digital magazines, ebooks, and interactive online documents. So why in the heck would you use InDesign to create your resume instead of Word? So InDesign is a page layout program that specializes in allowing you to control your layouts with precision. Word is a word processing tool with some layout tools. You don't have the control in Word that you do in InDesign. That's the important distinction. So today we're going to cover resources for resume. We'll look about the user interface in InDesign, since the majority of you are brand new, and then we'll look at the mechanics of creating a resume. So let's get started with resume resources. In the resources folder, let me quit this really quickly. In the resources, the resume workshop one, there is a links and resources. In it, you have resume tips and links. So a resume expert reveals what a perfect resume looks like. You can just highlight this, copy it, and paste it into your browser. 10 reasons why this is an excellent resume, what recruiters look at during the 6 seconds they spend on your resume, and other things such as that. Then on Adobe site, there's how to create a professional resume. Adobe also has the video, 10-minute video, almost 11, about how to snazz up your resume. And then there is a training one on lynda.com using InDesign to create your resume. In today's class, we're going to learn the mechanics of creating a creative resume. But the links that I gave you, they're going to go into a better understanding of what content you should put on your resume. One of the things that I included on there in the links and resources is a graphic for the perfect resume for a recent college graduate. This is from Business Insider, and so they're giving an example of this guy named Shane Fusco, and it takes apart every single one, and it tells you why this was important and why it's relevant for what you're doing. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll launch InDesign. Everyone have InDesign on your computers? Okay, great. So what we want to do is we want to create a brand new page. We're going to start tabula rasa, clean slate. So we'll go to the File menu, we'll choose New, and we'll choose New Document. Now, depending on which version of InDesign you're on, whether you're on Windows or Mac, you might get a new document dialog box. It looks very different than this. It might be the start page. So the version I have doesn't have that start page, and so instead we'll just have this new document one. How many of you have a whole bunch of templates? Okay, so then I guess we're on the same page then. So we'll go to the new document, and so what we want to do is we want to look for the intent. Do we want to go to print, web, or mobile? Now InDesign, as I indicated earlier, used to be a print, well, it still is a print design application. InDesign was created exclusively for print, and what that meant is that when you wanted to print stuff for magazines, brochures, catalogs, books, then you would use InDesign to do that. But because the industry has changed so much, you're expected to be able to take your creative content, in this case your resume, and be able to repurpose it. So let's say you want to be able to print your resume, or you want to be able to create an interactive resume so someone can view it on the web or on a tablet or mobile-based device. So InDesign gives you that ability. So you can add all of this interactivity there, even though InDesign was created initially to be a print. So we can go to print, web, or mobile, but we're going to start with print. But just because we start with print doesn't mean that we can't add some interactivity later. So we could have a print version of our resume, and if we wanted to add some type of interactivity like movies and audio, voiceovers, we can do, or animation, we could do that as well. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and choose print, and we'll just keep it at one page. We're going to keep it very, very simple. So then we'll go ahead and we'll click, then we can see right here we have orientation. We have portrait or landscape. And by default, it's going to be portrait orientation. So let's select portrait orientation, and we'll go ahead and we'll click OK. Does everyone have that? Excellent. So what we want to do is I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I want to make sure that our workspace is set up similarly. So let's go to the window menu. Let's go to workspace, window workspace, and make sure that you have essentials. Does everyone have essentials? Okay, and if yours is in a disarray like mine is, I'll just go ahead and I will reset essentials. Is everyone good there? Okay, so let me explain, since almost all of you are brand new to InDesign, I want to first explain a little bit about the user interface before we start getting in the mechanics of creating this creative resume. So this right here is our page, and on our page, anything that is white gets printed. These areas right here, when I created that brand new page, these are the margins. And the margins, these lines, these margin lines, they don't print. These are non-printable margin lines. They just give us the ability to be able to line things up. And sometimes people like to put text, inside the margins. They don't like having text buttressed right up against the edge of that page. But sometimes you might like it. Okay, so anything in here. Then we have these units of measurement right here. We have this horizontal line, and we have this vertical line. If you do not see these rulers, you'd go to the view menu, and right now if the rulers were hidden, you go to the view menu and then you select show rulers. Does everyone have that? Great. So what the heck are these? I mean, like what do these units of measurements mean? Well, if you right click onto those rulers, and if you don't if you're on the Windows, just right click. If you're on Mac, if you have a mouse, right click on it, or you just hold the control key on Mac, not the command but the control key, and then when you click, that gives you the contextual menu. So these are set to picas. There's points and picas, inches, whatever. Most of the time the default setting is going to be set to picas, and then you use points. However, for us, let's just set it to inches. Inches is going to make more sense if you're not used to working with points or picas. And later on I'll explain what points and picas are. But let's just set it to inches right now. So now I can see that this is 8.5 inches. And then I go down here, I'm like, what the heck is this? Well, it's the same thing. It's set to picas. So I will right click on there, and I will select inches. So now we can see that this document is 8.5 by 11 inches. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So now we want to be able to put content on here. Typically when we want to create content or move content around, we go to this tool panel right here. This allows us to put type on our page. It allows us to create shapes. It allows us to transform, move shapes. Allows us to put gradients on there. I can zoom into the image. I can pan around that image, or I can use the selection tool to move around. Additionally, over here to the right, I have other panels. Panels such as pages, like how many pages do I have. If I clicked on to add another page, I could see that I have a second page right there. But this shows me all the pages and layers. How many of you used Photoshop before? Okay, so for those of you who use Photoshop, the layers is the same concept. You have the stacking order. I put things on top of each other. What's on top hides what's below it. And then we have this thing called links. Links are very important when you're working in InDesign, because what links do, when you place content, when you bring content in here, you won't embed it, you'll actually place it. And what placing means, and we'll do this in a second, what placing means is you place a version of that file, that media file, on your document, and then it will link back to the original document. So that everything works with that way. And like I said, this will make sense once we start doing the mechanics. So then in addition to that, when I select one of the tools, I have these options up here. This is the control options bar up there. So for example, if I click on the type tool, this control options bar updates to give me controls for that. If I was to instead select the rectangle tool, I now have options for that rectangle tool. So different tools, different options. I click on the pencil tool, same thing. Okay, so what we want to do is, if I go back to that folder really quickly, let me go to that resume file. Let's go to that resume file, click on Adobe Project, and we're going to select that resume.indd. Do you all see that? Okay, so double click on that. So this is the resume that, or the starting point that Adobe had on the link that I gave you. So on those links, those text links file, I guess I don't have it. There's a link where you could download this, and it takes you through the process of changing things after the fact. However, what we want to do is we want to do things a little bit differently. And so what we want to do is we want to start from the ground up building this, but use this as a reference. And so here I could see that this sidebar, this goes in at 3 inches. So let's just start with this. We want to create this little sidebar right there. So we'll go ahead and we will select the rectangle tool. So we'll select the rectangle tool right there. And what we want to do is we want to select a fill color. So we'll click on there. And I'm going to choose right here where it says cyan. Do you all see that? So we click on that. And then I'm going to drag this out. Well, I want to have it around 3 inches from the left-hand side before I start to drag that. So what I want to do is I want to add a guide. So go over here to the vertical ruler right there, press down on that, and we will drag that out. And see, as I'm dragging out that vertical guide, it tells me how many inches, where it's being placed. You could also see up at the top. So when I get to around 3 inches, it's going to snap. So we are going to let that go. And so now I have a vertical guide 3 inches in. The reason why I'm using guides is so I know where I can draw things with exact placement. If we go back to this original one, we can see that this starts flush at the very top and it goes almost to the bottom, but not. And then it has this little page turned up icon. So let's go ahead and we have our, make sure that we have our rectangle tool. You go ahead and click that. And then I start to drag. We're dragging that out. And see how it just snaps as soon as it gets to the guide? So I like that. Then I drag this down. But oops, if I go too far, no worries. I'm just going to drag it up a little more. So I'll have it just before it gets to the margins and stuff. And then I'll let go. Does everyone have that? Okay, what are you... So let me go ahead and do that again. So I went ahead and, for those of you who have issues, I went ahead and I select the rectangle tool. I make sure that I have a fill color selected. So I clicked on that little sideways triangle right there. I selected cyan. And then I click to close that. Then from the very top, I press and I drag that down. And it snaps to the vertical guide. And I drag this down. And typically I would have one in the horizontal as well instead of, but I'll just say, you know what, let's just go a little bit above that guideline and I'll let go. Does everyone have that? Okay, great. So now that we have that, there's also these other options. You see this line right here? So this is a stroke. And if we go ahead and we start, clicking on that, we can add a stroke to that if we want to. But right now, I'm going to click right here where it says stroke on that sideways delta. And instead of choosing a color, I'm going to choose none. So let's click on none. So we will have no stroke on that object. And then I'll click to close it. So this little sideways triangle opens it and closes it by clicking. Does everyone have that? Awesome. So once again, drag the guides out. Go ahead, get the rectangle tool. I press and I drag out. And I get it just a little bit above that margin, and then I let go. And if there's a stroke, click on that sideways triangle and select none. And then I'll close that, and then we're good to go. So does everyone have that now? Okay. I'm going to lay things on top of it. So if I click onto that reference one, this is the starting point. There's text, and there's going to be a photo there. There's going to be other things inside there. And I don't want to accidentally group it in with this rectangle. So what we're going to do is we get our selection tool, we click onto this rectangle just to make sure that it's selected. And when I say selected, watch what happens if I click over here in this gray area, click out there. Now I can see that this is not selected, but as soon as I click onto that rectangle, it's selected. And so what we want to do is we want to lock it down so we don't, one, accidentally move it, or two, accidentally group content in there. We want this to be independent of everything else. So what we'll do is we will go to our Pages panel, and you see our pages right there? So we click on our Pages panel on the right-hand side. And then there's also another one called Layers. So let's click on Layers. You all see Layers? So I could have clicked on. We click on Layers. Yes? Oh, you don't have layers? Okay, if you don't see the layers, anytime you want to try to find a menu, you would go to, or you want to find a panel, go to the window menu, and then you'll find, whatever panel that you're looking for. Do you see it now? Yeah. Okay, great. So yeah, you just choose layers, and then layers will pop up. So now that we have, it says layer 1, but I'm going to click on this triangle. It's called the disclosure triangle. We click on that, and that will go ahead and open up that, that layer and shows me everything that I have on that layer. Well, rectangle is not very descriptive of what this is, especially if I'm going to have other content that will have rectangles on there. So if we want to change the name of this layer, we can just double click on there, and it will go ahead and give us the ability to rename that. So we will name, what should we call this? The what? The flip page. Okay, we'll call it whatever it is that makes sense to you. And so you want to call it blue flip page. So one of the students wants, I'm being recorded out. So one of the students wants to do a blue flip page. So we'll go ahead and hit Enter or Return. And incidentally, whether you're on Windows or Mac, it's going to be a very similar experience. Typically, I work on Windows machine. Right now, I'm working on a Mac, but it's going to be the same. The only thing that's going to be different is the shortcuts, and I'll talk about that when we get to those shortcuts. Okay, so now we have that blue flip page. And so the advantage of a layer is if you go right here to this eyeball, right here, it says Toggles Visibility, we can turn that eyeball off and on to toggle the visibility. But what I want to do is I want to click right here between the eyeball and the name of that layer, and it says Toggle Page Item Lock. So if we click on there, that means I can't do anything. If I try moving this, or editing it, I won't be able to do anything. So this is exactly what I want right now. I want this to be locked down. I'm like, okay, great. Now, the next thing that I would like to do is if we go ahead here, and I'm going to get my zoom tool to zoom in. See how there's that little page turned up icon? So what we want to do is we want to kind of replicate that. So let's go ahead and let's get our zoom tool, So click on the zoom tool right here, and I'm going to zoom in. I just drag a little selection marquee. Let me do that again. I got the zoom tool and I pressed and I dragged out this little zoom marquee around the bottom corner so I can see exactly what's going on. Does that make sense? Okay. So in this case, you know what? I might want to bring a guide down just so it makes it easier for me. So let's press down on that horizontal guide, and I'll drag this down here to the very bottom. So now I have a guide there and I have a guide here. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So what we want to do is we want to fill this with white. So we'll fill this with white, and how we're going to do that is we get the rectangle tool again. Let's get the rectangle tool again. And then let's drag a small little square. So we press and we start to drag that out like this. I'm dragging this out. But if I want to make it a if I want to constrain the proportions, instead of a rectangle I want a square, you will hold the shift key. The shift key, is that modifier to keep it. You hold the shift key as you're dragging it out, and it'll go ahead and do the shift key. Boop. And then I let go. But what's the problem with this? There's a line on it and it's blue. So what I'm trying to do is I want to create a white square initially. So I want to create a white square, and then I'm going to create this triangle over that white square. So it gives this illusion of a page turned up. So first thing that we need to do is we need to get rid of the stroke. So let's go right here to this stroke. We'll click on it, and what am I going to select? Exactly, we'll go none. And what color do you think I want to fill this with? With white. So I click here to that triangle, and we'll just choose paper, and then I can click to close it. So what's the problem that I have with mine? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the selection tool. So the problem that I have, if I get my zoom tool and we zoom in a little more, it's like, oops, that's not going to look very realistic trying to fake a background if I could see the original rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and get my, go right here to the selection tool, and it's the top tool. We click, make sure that this square is selected, and I can press and I can drag that down, and it'll snap to the guides. Now in this case, I should probably, let me, whoopsie. Let me just zoom in here really quickly. I just want to clean this up just a little bit so it snaps to the guide. Beep. Okay, now I have this snapping to the guide. Okay, so I'm down here at the bottom. And I have that white square. I select it, and the great thing about those guides is, when I drag it to it, it will automatically snap to the edge of those guides. Does that make sense? Great. So that's why guides are very important, because it helps me, view things, and it helps me align things with precision. So now I have this white square, and what we're trying to do is get this page turn up icon. So we have this white square in this area. So now what do you think we need to do here? Let's lock this square. And typically, like I said, you'd give this a name. But this would be I'll double click on here and call this page square. Or, oops, need to spell it right. Page turn square. And then hit return or enter. Okay, and then make sure that that's locked so I can't accidentally move anything. So does everyone have that now? Okay, great. Next thing we want to do is we want to get our pin tool. Let's get our pin tool. And we are going to make sure that stroke is off. So we click on here, select none. Then we want to go to our fill. And what color do you think we're going to choose for that triangle that we're going to create? It was gray. It was like a dark gray. So what we would do, if we click here, let us select black. And as soon as we do that, we can close that. Oops. We click on black. We see right there where there's that tint color. Watch this. We start dragging that down, then it starts, giving us gray. So get it a dark gray. Just dial that percentage value in, whatever you think is appropriate. Get it the way that you want. Oops. Need to make sure that I do that again, and then close that. And now, so we have no stroke and we have that gray. And so what we do is we go right here to the little corner right there, that bottom corner. We click, reposition, we click, reposition, we click to set a point. But then we can't end there. We need to go to the very bottom. And as soon as we go back to where we first started, notice how that pen tool has that little circle around it. Do y'all see that? Okay, so go ahead and then we will click on it, and that closes it. Yes?
I don't even get the same pencil.
Okay, no worries.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll redo that. Okay, so let me see something really cool. Okay, so select the pen tool. Do you have the pen tool?
Yeah, it's just that it's not the same. It has like a little plus next to it.
Oh, okay. So if you press down, make sure. Okay, so anytime you have a tool and you have that little sideways triangle, if you press down, you can see hidden tools. By default, the pen tool, should be the top tool. But if you'd clicked on something else and you have the pen with a plus, that will add a point. So yeah, just select the pen tool, and then we click in that corner to set an anchor point. We click in this corner to set an anchor point. We click in this corner to set an anchor point. And then we have to go down to the very bottom. And then as soon as we go back to the first anchor point, see how it has that little circle on the pen? Yes?
My pencil, when I click on it, it extends out in both directions instead of just one direction.
Okay, yeah, I'll come over there and help you. So I'll just close this one right now, and then I'll come over there. So I click here, and now I have that, that page turn up icon. So let me come over there.
Yeah, we saw it.
All right.
I was dragging, not clicking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so that's an important thing as well. So let me lock this really quickly. When you have that pen tool, what the pen tool does, if I click, 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 it will set points. So that's cool. However, if you get that pen tool and I click and I press down, then I can start creating these go ahead, these curvilinear shapes, and typically what people will do is they'll set everything to none really quickly, and then they'll just click these points so they can have these shapes and not have to be distracted by a fill. But these are how people create these curvilinear shapes, and you can just go ahead and then I can dial these shapes in, at a at a later point. I can take these control handles and reposition them, as I see fit. But that's not what we're doing now. So let me just, if you happen to get that, select this really quickly and hit delete. Okay, so we should have that blue sidebar. We should have that white square right there. It's faking the background. And then we should have this, this triangle. So let's double click. Mine says polygon, so we'll go ahead and click on there. And we'll call this, what do you want to call this? Okay, I'll call it paper turn, corner turned up. So I call this corner turned up and hit return. Whatever it is, just get in a good workflow habit of naming your layers so that it makes sense. Because I don't want to have like 12, 13 different layers called rectangle or polygon. It's going to make no sense. It's going to be very challenging for me if I want to go back and make changes later on. Okay, so I'm going to lock all three of those just to make sure that we're good. And I want to view this entire document in the window. So what I would do is I'll go to the View menu and I'll say fit that page in the window. So I click ahead here, and so now I can see that entire page in the window. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So then if we go back to this one right here, I can see that, let me get my zoom tool. I can see that we have this line right here that's probably around 3.5 inches, a little more than 3.5 inches in. And so what we're going to do is we'll do the same thing. So let's go ahead and get our line tool. Do you see that line tool right here underneath the type tool? So click on that. And what we're going to do is if we drag this out, nothing's going, if I just drag this out, let's go to maybe around 3.5 inches, and we'll start at the margin and just drag that down. And I want it a straight line, or if I want it straight vertical, hold the shift key. So hold the shift key, and I'm going to drag this to the right to the very bottom. I'm going to go from that margin to the bottom. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go margin to margin. So we're going to go margin to margin on that, and we'll let go. Well, right now we don't have a stroke applied to that. So what we want to do, see right here it says stroke. Click where it says stroke, and let's choose black. We'll click black. Then I can click on that triangle to close that. Watch what happens if we increase the size of that. Like, but I don't want it that large. So we'll change the size of that. But what we want to do is we actually want to change the strokes. So instead of a straight line, you see right here, if I go over to this section right here, if I go ahead and I click on that upside down, bless you, triangle, I can see all of these different options. I can have wavy or dashed or dotted, white diamond, all these different ones. So right now, let's select Japanese dots. Click on Japanese dots. Does everyone have that? Okay, so I'm going to bring the point size down a bit. And the whole thing about when you're designing something, you can see here, like these lines right here, these are set to 2 points. If I click on the original one, I click on here, these are 2 points and they were Japanese dots. And so we'll do the same thing. We'll select that and we'll select 2 points. The whole thing when you're doing design items on your resume, they should complement the design. They should not be overpowering. So the whole thing is like you want this to be visually appealing to someone but not distracting. And so we don't want it too distracting. So 2 points is good. Well, if I click off of that, I no longer have that blue line around it. So watch this. If you can't see, you're like, hey, I can't see that line because I have that selection around it. If I click off of that, now it's no longer selected and I don't have that selection bounding box around it. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So I like to lock things down, so I'm going to lock on that. And where it says line, I'll go ahead and I'll click on that and I'll call this, what do you want to call this? The what? Japanese dots, okay. And so you go right here, like I said, if you want to, anytime if you want to go to a file, you click on it and then it'll tell you what that is. And so these were the Japanese dots and stuff. And it can tell you there's 2 points. Okay, so yeah, we go ahead and, oops. So we go ahead and put Japanese dots and then hit return, and so now I've got those in place. Excellent. So now if we go back to this original one right here, we can see that there's going to be some text here, text there, some other ones. And so what we're going to do is we'll just put some text, some non-formatted text, and we're going to format it later. So what we want to do is let's put a placeholder for photos. So we'll go ahead here, and I'll go right here to see where the rectangle tool is. Get the rectangle tool. Actually, let me see something really quick. Oops. Yeah, so go ahead and get the rectangle tool, and I will drag out where I want that, shape to be, but I can't see anything. Why can't I see anything? There's no color. So I can click on it, and I'll just choose black. And remember that last tint, so that's fine. That's good. It doesn't matter what the color is because I'm just using this as a placeholder. And so I can reposition this where I want to, and then later on when I want to and this is what's kind of cool. There's this thing called smart guides. If I want to line this up and I want to have this align center with this blue sidebar, if I move this, if I drag this, see how it automatically will snap to the center? So if I'm out here, watch this. Like if I'm here, boom, that snaps to the center of the page. If I go ahead here, boop, it snaps when that middle is centered to this. Pretty cool? So I like that. So I have that there. And actually, you know what? This is part of being the creative part. Do you want to put your photo in a square, a rectangle, or a circle? Circle? Okay. So let's select this and we'll hit delete. And so we'll go ahead and instead of the rectangle tool, let's press down on the rectangle tool and select the ellipse tool. So we'll get the ellipse tool. And in this case, I'll go up here to the fill color, and I'll just choose the fill color ahead of time. And oh, good, the tint is set to 76, so I like that. Then we start dragging this out, and then if I'm dragging this out and it's like ooh, getting this, and I don't like that aspect ratio, if I hold the shift key down, see how it'll drag out a perfect circle? So if you hold the shift key when you're dragging out a shape, it'll constrain the proportions. So I go ahead here and I drag this out, and then I let go. Then I can go ahead and get my selection tool, and let's say I was over here, and I move this. Watch what happens. As soon as I get right to the center of that, boop, it'll go ahead and snap, and I'm like, awesome. So now I have this completely centered to it. The margins throw it off like visually a little bit, but this is the same distance from here to here and it is from here to here. Does that make sense? And if you select this, you go right here, you can move this, with your however you want. But then in addition, if you want to be a little more exacting, see right there where there's the x coordinates and the y coordinates? So I can even go up here, I can change the x. So this is the x. Let me bring this back. I can change the y. So I just change that up. And so this is cool. So if I'm just changing the y coordinates however I see fit. Okay, cool. Does that make sense? Yes?
What's the difference between two selection?
Between what?
Two selection
Between so what is the difference between getting the selection tool and clicking on here and dragging it up or dragging it down? It's just different ways of doing the same thing.
I mean, there are two selection.
Okay. Oh, you're talking about this. Okay, one is the direct selection tool. This is remember when I created those anchor points for that for the pin tool? This allows me to click on those anchor points or the Bezier control handles and change the curvature of it and move just a particular path segment. So it's beyond what we're doing right now. So for what we're doing, we just need to click on just the selection tool. Yeah. But this would be if you're working with path segments. Okay, so I get it to where I want. This is good, and I like that. Now, make sure we save this. So let's get in the habit of saving it. So go File, Save As. I'll save it in my project, and we'll call this Test, Resume, or whatever you want. You can call it. And I'm just going to save this. Get in the habit of saving often, because it's not if your computer is going to crash, your application is going to crash, it's when. And nothing worse than working on something for a while and then having your computer crash on you. So just get in the habit of saving that. So then we'll go ahead and we will put some type at the top. So we'll go ahead and I want to put, if we look right here, there's the name, first name, last name. So go ahead and we're going to press down to create, and actually I'm going to drag it out here so you can see a little better. So I just, what I did is I held the space bar as I'm dragging this out. So I just dragged it out here so I can see a little bit better. Okay, so because it's blue, or the cyan, what color do you want the name to be? The color of the text? Black. Okay, so we select that. And we can change the, what the name of it is right here. Like if I go ahead here, I can say, okay, maybe I want it Helvetica. I can select Helvetica. And what's cool about this is that if I want to see what that typeface looks like, I can see the sample right there. So I don't have to click on each one. I can just say, okay, let me scroll through here to look for something that I like. I'm just going to do Helvetica. You could choose whatever you want. So I choose Helvetica. And what size do I want? I don't know. Maybe when I click here, see how it gets a bit larger? I can always change this after the fact. So I'm going to put mine at 24 points. Maybe that will work. Maybe it won't. So I'm going to go ahead, and if we look over here, there's the first line and then the second line. So I'll go ahead and I'll type in my name, and then I'll hit return, and then I'll type in my last name. Then I can get this selection tool and I can position this where I want to. However, I'm deciding that, what, I want that a bit larger. So if I get my type tool right here and that's selected, and if I go ahead to increase that size, I can go ahead and I can do that as well. Does that make sense? Maybe I want to change that from regular to bold. Okay, so I'll do that, regular to bold, and maybe not as large. Okay, so I have it the way that I like. Now, I get my selection tool and I move it wherever I want to. But notice something really quickly. Notice how when I created that type, right here, when I created that, it is left justified. But let's say I want to be able to position it over here, and I want to center it exactly on there. But if I do that, I'm like, wait a second, that's not centered. Even though it just showed me when I did that, it's centered. Why is it showing me that it's centered? Exactly, it's basing it off of this bounding box. So how we can, this is typically what I'll do if I'm done working with text and I want to align things up. Let's go ahead and we will right click inside of that text frame, and you'll get this option called fitting. Do you all see that? So we will right click in that bounding box, we will go to fitting, and then we'll choose fit frame to content. Does everyone have that? Great. And then typically it'll do, typically when you go to fitting and then you go fit frame to content, it will work, but sometimes it still leaves some spacing behind depending on if they're hidden characters or whatnot. So in that case, I can just get the edge. I can go right here to the little edge of the text, and I just drag it, but just before it cuts off, and I'm like, okay. So now I've got it the way that I want. I can drag that, and then as soon as I get it to the center, boop, now it is centered. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Let's make sure to save this. We'll go File, oops, Save. Now we have that. But you know what? It's like, so we have this little placeholder for a photo. And why would you put a placeholder, there instead of just placing the photo? So let's go ahead and just open up a new page. I'm going to talk about placing photos, and I don't want to mess this one up. So let's create a brand new document. And we can just choose the default, print one, and click OK. So does everyone have that? Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to place a photo here. So let's go to the File menu. We'll go to the File menu, and then we'll go ahead and then we'll choose Place. Do you all see Place? So go File, Place. And what Place is going to do is it's going to give us the ability to place content, place our creative content onto the document. So do you all see where it says, are you all in the, let me go back one really quickly. Let us go to our, go to our class files, and do you all see this folder that says links? Okay, click on links, and then you see where it says photo. Okay, so we'll select where it says Cody headshot, and then it tells me what the dimensions are. Click open, and so here's this photo, and let's just click anywhere. Boop. So as soon as we click here, what we'll notice is that this is a much larger photo than what we needed. So when you click, when you place it, it places that linked object at 100%. Does that make sense? Okay, and we can also, if we go right here to the links, let's go here to our links panel, and we can see that it says, okay, we have one linked image. It says it's Cody headshot, and if I scroll down here, it tells me that the name of it is a Photoshop document, what the dimensions are, and I'm like, okay, it tells me everything that I need to know about this document, or about that. So let's select here and hit delete. Let's do that again. We'll go File, Place, we'll select Cody headshot, we'll click open. Now instead of just clicking, if we press down, and let's say we wanted it in a certain size, let's say I wanted the headshot to be this large, we just drag it out, and notice as we're dragging it out, it tells us what the percentage is. So this one tells me this is like 33% of the original size, and we let go, and there is the photo. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's delete that. And what we did with a placeholder, I went ahead, you can do a placeholder with the ellipse frame tool, or what I did, bless you, or I just did the ellipse tool here. Let's go ahead and choose the ellipse frame tool. Do y'all see that? So it's right under the pencil. Select the ellipse frame tool, and we'll drag this out. And if I want a perfect circle, what modifier key do I hold?
Shift.
Exactly, hold the shift key, and I click, and I let go. And typically, what you'll do is if you don't have the photo, you'll create a placeholder. So when you select it, it has no fill. So what do I want to do? So I know that this is a shape of, because if I click off this later, I could see that, but it makes it easier if I select that and do what? Add a fill to that. So let's go right here to where the fill is. You could choose whatever, because I'm going to click black, and then I like to bring the tint down just so I know that that is a placeholder, and then I click to close that. Why is that important? So let's say let's click off of this. So we're working on the document. I'm like, oh, you know what? I want to bring that photo in here. I didn't have the photo at the time, but now I do. We will click onto that circle. So click on the circle, and we will go to the File menu. We'll choose Place. We will select Cody Headshot. Do y'all have that? Then we click Open, and now it placed that photo inside of that shape. But what problem do I have right here? It's not centered. So if we move this around, oops, if I select that, let me go ahead here really quickly. Beep. Yes, if I go ahead and I move this around, I'm like, whoa, I'm like trying to center it. So this is where you need to be aware. When you click onto that image and you move that around, you're going to move the frame and the photo itself. If you want to move the photo independent of the frame that surrounds it, so when you put when you place any object onto the page, it needs to have a frame that supports it. Just like, let's say you're going to put a photo, and it's like you have this frame and you put a photo on there, or a painting. There's a frame that surrounds it. So something needs to surround it. And so in this case, a circular frame surrounds it. But it also shows us a square bounding box, even though it's a circular frame. If you want to move the content within inside the frame and not the frame, you see this little, when I put my cursor over the middle, I get this, it's what's called a content grabber. Notice how the cursor shifts from the move to, as soon as I click on there, on that content grabber, now I see, what is this bounding box right here? Exactly, that's the original photo. So I can, click on the content grabber, and I hold the content grabber down, and I just reposition it. I can also do up arrow on my keyboard or down arrow on my keyboard as well. So that's kind of cool. But in addition to that, if I want to resize this, if I drag this down, what's going to happen? Photo's going to get distorted, like, that's not what I wanted. So let me undo that. So if I want to scale it down or up and I want to maintain the proportions, hold the Shift key. Hold the Shift key, that'll constrain the proportions. Boop. And so now it repositioned inside there. Then click on the content grabber and I can move this as I see fit. If I want to resize this again, just hold the Shift key and then I click on the content grabber and I can click off it. Does that make sense? Okay, great. And so that's, it's important that you know the difference between the bounding box for the frame and the bounding box for the original linked content. So we're going to go back to our resume one, and let's say we have our photo now. We can just click inside there, and go File, Place. We'll select that headshot and click Open. Beep. So now that's not me. So if I want to move this, how would I move the photo inside here? Click onto the content grabber and then I can reposition this. Now if I want to resize this, if I want to resize that photo, hold the Shift key and grab one of the corner handles and I can size this down. But when I'm sizing this down, I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? What's this? Where does that gray come from? The frame, exactly. That's the original frame. So I just click on that content grabber and just make sure that, nothing's being, okay. So now I have that photo and then I can just click off. And so now I have the photo the way that I want. So what's kind of cool is that, here's that headshot right there. Watch what happens if we click back on here. And we go right here to where it says Effects. Click on Effects. Let's choose a drop shadow. And you see where it says preview? Click on preview. And we could put a little drop shadow on there.
How do you?
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that again.
No,
We don't have
The-
we have preview.
Okay, so I clicked on the photo. I go right here to the little effects. You see the effects icon at the top? Right up here. We click on that. And we'll go ahead and we'll choose drop shadow. And then you go to the very bottom left-hand corner. Do you see that? Okay. Click on preview. Because if you don't, then you won't be able to see that. So click on preview. And then you could change the opacity for this. You could change the angle. So watch what happens when I change the angle. So you get the angle the way that you want. And then I can increase or decrease the opacity. But like I said, everything that you do, you should be judicious in your use of it. You don't want to have it overbearing. And maybe I thought the distance, that might be ridiculous. So I'll just bring the distance in. I'll make it, bring it closer to it. So it's just adding a little bit of a depth to it, but not too much. We don't want it to be distracting. Okay, does everyone have that? Okay, go ahead and click OK. And then if I click off of it, I could see what that looks like. So that made it stand out a little more. Okay, so I'm actually just going to change because I'm put John Doe. Okay. It's actually my friend Corey. Okay, fit from the content. Okay, so we go ahead here. So now we have this and we have that. And now what we want to do is, if we look at the original one, we have all this text. And they've done the text a little bit differently than what I would do. So you have all this text right here, the dates and everything. Now, let's go ahead and create a new document. I want to show you how to work with text before we actually bring it in here. So let's create a brand new document. Go File, New, Document. I'm going to just go ahead and choose the default and click OK. So everyone have this new document. Okay, I want to show you how text works, and then I want to show you how character and paragraph styles work, and it's going to make things so much easier for us. Okay, so if we want to create text starting from scratch, we just go to the type menu right here. We need to drag out a text frame, and if I just want to put like a header over there, I'm just going to draw this across, and this is where my header would be. So let's just type in here, we'll call this header. We'll do it all caps. Just leave it exactly how it, just don't do any formatting to it. Header, and then when I'm done, I'll just click on the selection tool to get out of there. So now I have this header right there. What I want to do now is I get another type tool right here. I'm going to drag this out. Drag it all the way to here, and I'm going to call this subheader. Get my selection tool and click off of that. So now I have a header, subheader, but now I want to do body copy. So let's get our type tool right here. We press down, we're going to put like paragraph, do some paragraph. If I drag this out, I can drag this long paragraph of text. But if I want to, this is kind of cool. If you do right arrow on your keyboard, I can create a second column of text. Right arrow on the keyboard. So, and if I want a third one, I do hit it 3 times. If I want to get rid of one, I just do left arrow. So right arrow adds a column, up arrow adds a row. Down arrow gets rid of one. So for right now, we're just going to do right arrow to add a column of text. Does that make sense? Okay, so what we want to do now is I want to put some placeholder text. We're going to be designing this, and I don't know what type, what text I want to use. So we're going to create placeholder text. And how we do that, let's go to the type menu right here, and we're going to select fill with placeholder text. Fill with placeholder text. And like I said, and the reason we're taking a little detour from our resume document is because I want to give you an understanding of the mechanics of how to work with type, how to work with photos, so that we're in that document and we have a bunch of stuff going on, it doesn't become confusing. And once we do this, it'll make so much sense when we start placing stuff in our resume document. So now we have a header, we have a subheader, and then we have this paragraph. So what we want to do right now is we want to create a style for the header, we want to create another style for the subheader, and we want to create a we want to create a style for the paragraph. And the reason why we're going to create styles is because if we have a bunch of different characters that we want to change at once, by creating a style it allows us to do that. Same thing with copy. Imagine having 40-50 pages of content and you decide that you want to change the header on it, or you want to change the formatting for the paragraphs. Well, instead of having to go to each page and changing that and go, that'll take forever, you just define things as style and apply it to them. So let's go right ahead here. We'll highlight where it says header. Everyone have that? Okay. So now I'm going to change this from Minion Pro to something else. I'll change this. I'm going to change this to Arial Black, and I'm going to increase the size to maybe 36. And then I'm going to change the color, and how I change the color is I go right over here to where the text is. I click on it, and what color do you want for the header? Yellow. Okay. We'll click on yellow, and then we click here to close that. So now I have that yellow header. So now what I want to do is I want to tell InDesign I want you to save this as a character style. So anytime I have another header, I can apply the style to it really quickly without having to change every one. So we'll go to the window menu, we'll go to styles, and we'll go to character styles. So right now I have no character styles. So what I want to do right now is go ahead right here and click on create a new style. Let's click on create a new style and see where it says character style 1. We double click on that, and what should we call this style? We'll call this header style. And so this tells us that it's, that I'm using Arial Black at 36 points and the color is, yellow. But I can also click through here if I want to change things. If I decide, oh, you know what, I wanted something else. Or I could say, you know what, every time I have defined something as a header, have it as all caps. So if I, did something and it was just, and they were, I had uppercase and lowercase, but now I said, you know what, anytime I create something that's a header, all caps. And then, do you want to underline or no? Sure, why not? Oh, you said no. Okay. But then I have advanced character formatting. I already have the color of that. I can do that as well. There's all these different options, but I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now I have this header style. So let's do the same thing for the subheader. We'll go over the subheader. What typeface do you want to choose for the subheader? Now, typically, I would stay within, when I'm creating a resume, I would use 1 to 2 typefaces. I wouldn't use any more than that. Then it becomes a little ridiculous and doesn't look professional. However, for this, we could just goof around and play around with this. I had Arial Black. So for this, I say, you know what? I could see do I want to go Arial or Arial narrow. So I'm going to choose Arial narrow. Like I said, you can choose whatever you want. So at least it's in the same family. So Arial narrow, and then maybe I'll choose italic. So Arial narrow italic, and then I can go ahead and I'm like, okay, maybe I like that size. Maybe just go up to 14. Okay, so it's 14. And what color do you want this to be? Like I said, this is for creative purposes. You know, right now, when you're doing your resume, you want to, you know, not get, you know, you want to be, what? Okay, so we'll do, so right here, let me close this really quick. Oops. Let me do this again. So I click here. Now I'm like, where is orange? So if you do not see the color that you want, what you can do right here, like these are just some preset swatches. I can go ahead here, I can go to the window menu, and I can go to color, and I can go to swatches, and I have my swatches right here. It's the same thing as what we did when we clicked here. But if I want to actually choose a specific color, or I click right here, and this is where I can drag this hue slider. I drag this up, and I'm like, okay, there's orange. So I just drag my little orange over there. And notice how this hue slider changes so I can get the exact orange that I want. Is that good? And so then I can go ahead here and then click OK. So I have it orange, I have it Arial narrow at italic. So what do you think I need to do now? I'm going to go to Window, Styles, and I'm going to go to Character Styles. And how do I create a new character style? Exactly. I click right here to create a new style, and I'll call this, I'll double click on that, and I'll call that subheader. And it tells me, you know, everything. It says the Arial, italic, with the sizes and the color. And I go ahead and I click OK. And now I can just get my selection tool and I can click off of it. Okay, so I have a header style and I have that subheader. But now I wanted to define that, you know, that body copy, or that paragraph. And so what we're going to do is I'll just go ahead here and I'll click and I'll just select, you know, a paragraph. I'll select that, and I'm going to change the formatting options for that. So what typeface do you want to have for the paragraph? Okay. Maybe I'll choose, I don't know, choose whatever that you want. So I'll choose Georgia. I'll choose Georgia, and I will choose it, instead of 12, I'll have it maybe at 9 points. And what color do you want it? Okay, red. So I'll go ahead here, I'll scroll down, and we can go ahead and choose red. And like I said, you would not do a resume that had all these different colors, but we're just trying to, you know, we're just seeing how things work. So then I click here. So now I have red, Georgia, regular. But then if I go here to the paragraph formatting options, then I could say, do I want this left justified? Do I want it centered? Do I want it center justified? Do I want it center justified? You know, what do I want to have happen to this? And so you know what? Let's just keep it left justified. We'll keep that left justified. But then we also have spacing options right here. So see where that left indent is? So I can click up, you know, and I get an indent. So let's say I want it, you know, to have that I didn't want it flush there, but then I really like that, you know, over here I can do space before, drop caps, I can do, you know, spaces after, so that's kind of cool. But what I'm going to do, you see this one right here, it says first line indent. If we click on that, let's go ahead and bring that till we get to 1 pica, and so now all my paragraphs are going to have that, you know, indent. Does that make sense? Okay, so now what do you think I'm going to do here? I'm not going to do a character style. I'm instead going to do a paragraph style. So how do I create a new paragraph style? Exactly. I click right here to create a new style. It says paragraph style 1. I double click on that, and what should I call this paragraph style? Whatever. So, whatever paragraph style.
I'm sorry, where did you get the paragraph from, like, initially?
There's the character, and then I click to the right of that, the paragraph style.
Paragraph style, like, mine doesn't have that.
Okay, go to the window menu, go to styles, and then you see paragraph styles.
Yeah.
Okay, select paragraph styles. And then, so this is called I save that as but I'll just call this, USC resume paragraph style. And then we'll go ahead and click OK. And so now I can click off of that. So why was this, everything that I did, important? Well, the cool thing is, let's go down here and we'll create a brand new page. And then we're going to finish, then we'll do the resume. But like I said, this is important because we need to create one for the text that we place. So we'll go down here at the very bottom of the Pages panel and click on Create New Page. Does everyone have a new page? Okay. So what we want to do, get our Type tool, drag it, and then just type in header. Get the Type tool, drag out another one called subheader. Oops, helps if I. And get the Type tool and drag this out, and this is where I'm going to do my body copy. So I right click, or I'm sorry, I do right arrow to add another piece of another thing. Now, how can I fill this with placeholder text? Go to the Type menu, fill with placeholder text. Okay, so the reason why we're doing this when we create our resumes, is creating these styles, is that you can define things as headers, as subheaders, as your body copy. And if you want to make a change, instead of having to change every single thing, selecting it, highlighting it, make the change to each one, if you define a style, look how easy it is to apply that to it. So for the header, let's click on where it says header, and we go to character styles. What do you think what style do you think I'm going to choose for the header? Header style. Boop. And check this out. This is cool. Let me undo that. Even though right here for header, see how they're all lowercase? When I select that frame and click on header style, one of the style characteristics that I set it to was use all uppercase. And so if I go ahead here and I click on subheader, which style am I going to use? Subheader. Boop. And then if I go down here and if I get my Type tool and I just click in to a paragraph, what am I going to go? The paragraph style. I'm going to choose USC resume paragraph style, and it applied it with that indent to that paragraph. But let's say you want all of, that paragraph, so I can just click inside here and I can either press down and highlight everything, or I can click in here and do edit, select all. So now that entire paragraph is selected. So now we're going to click USC resume paragraph style. I click in there. I can get my selection tool and I move out. Pretty cool? Okay, so why is it important that we created those styles? Because like if I look here, I have like different pages, but if I wanted to, let's say, change this at any time, let me go to my character style and say, the header style, or let's say the subheader, if I double click on subheader, I say, I no longer want the subheader to, I no longer want the character color to be orange. Instead, I want it to be black. So I click on black, and I can actually preview this as well. So this is kind of cool. If I click on preview, I can see what's going on, and then I go ahead and click OK. And so now, oops, that subheader got changed. But if I go up to the first page, I scroll up here, scroll over there. See how the subheader changed? So this is why, I wanted to show you about working with type here, because when, let's not save this, when we go ahead here, we want to place some text in here. So we can either, one, create the text, on our own, or we can place Word documents or regular text documents in here. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go to the File menu. We'll choose Place. And we'll go File, Place, and we'll go to our Links folder. And you see the one that says Text? See the one that says Text? Click on Text, and then there's that Resume. So we have that Resume one, and we can actually see, the little preview of this. This was, a Word document. And actually, let me go ahead here really quickly. And actually, if I let me open that text up so you can see what it looks like. So it's going to open up Word. So this was created in Word. So we have formatting there. We have Arial 18 bold. We have, Arial bold 10. So this would be our experience, or this would be our header, our subheader. This would be the, paragraph. This would be a subheader here, subheader, and then we would have another header. So we have two headers, like one for experience, one for education, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 subheaders, and then we have, body copy. So we can bring the formatting over from Word, or what I prefer to do is just do our own formatting. So I'm going to click on, let me see. Before I place this, whether you're on Windows or Mac, you should see either Advanced Options or an Options button down at the bottom. Do you all see that? Click on that, and then select Show Import Options. Does everyone see that? Go ahead and click Open. And when that comes in, we can preserve styles and formatting from text and tables. And I'm going to say, you know what? Remove styles and formatting from text and tables, because I don't want, words formatting. I want a more precise formatting. So I'm going to remove the word styles. But if you wanted to, then you can, then you could just preserve the styles and, the format. But I'm going to remove that. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, if I just click, it's going to place it, just like that. But, so I could do that, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I go File, Place. I select that. Make sure I click Open. Make sure that I remove those styles. I click OK. Now, when I press down, and let's say I drag this out, I'm going to drag this out here, and I'll just drag it down to the bottom right here. Maybe I'll drag here to the bottom, and then I let go. So now I go ahead and I have, I brought that text in. I can even get the selection tool and I can move this around as I see fit. And so, great. So I have that text inside here. So what do you think I'm going to do where it says experience? I'm going to get my type tool. Oops. I'm going to highlight that, and we're going to make this a character style. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to put this at, I'll change this to Arial Black. I'll increase the size of that to 18. And then I'm just going to keep these the same, color and stuff to not get too out of hand. So we have that, and it's Arial black at 18. And what do you think I'm going to do right now? Create a new style. I'm going to call this header. And what I'm going to say for there is I have my header, and for case, I'm always going to choose all caps, and then click OK. So now all I need to do for that education, I highlight where it says education, and what do you think I'm going to do for that? Click on header. I'm like, awesome. And so for right here where it says job title, company, state, and country, for this one I selected Arial black. So for here I'll choose Arial again. I'll choose I'll just choose a regular Arial for this. I'll choose Arial. I'll keep it at 12. And I think, okay, Arial 12 is regular is good. And if I decide if I want to maybe italicize this, so maybe I'll italicize that. So Arial italic at 12 points. I will go ahead and create a new character style. And what am I going to name this? Subheader. Exactly. Okay. Subheader. I'll click OK. So now all I need to do is I highlight this other section, and I click on subheader. I click on this other section where it says school, degree, state, and I click on subheader. If I click off of that, I now have my header and all my subheaders done. And so now what we need to do is we'll just change the paragraph. So I'll go ahead here and I will, oh, you know what? I notice right here, I got to highlight this internship, and this will be a subheader there. So let me just, okay, so yeah, so I have subheader, text, subheader, paragraph, subheader, paragraph, header, subparagraph, paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this paragraph, and I'll go ahead and, you know what, maybe I'll stay within, I'll do Arial as well. So I'll do Arial. I'll choose Arial, regular at maybe 10 points. And I'll leave it black. And so what am I going to do right? Oh, and you know what? If I can go right here, I'm going to make sure that it's align left. And if I want to indent, I could do that as well. But right now I'm not. So I'm going to go to paragraph style. And what am I going to do? Click on create new style. I will double click on that, and I will call this resume paragraph style. Go ahead and click OK. And so now we can just, we don't have to highlight the other paragraphs. I can just click inside with my text tool. I can just click inside here, and I just click on resume paragraph. So check, so instead of highlighting, having to highlight everything, when you're on a paragraph, you just click anywhere inside that paragraph. Just click anywhere, and then click resume paragraph. Click anywhere, and click resume paragraph. Does that make sense? Then make sure to save this. So we were quickly able to, select the type, set some up styles to it. And the cool thing about it is then when we go do the other parts, so if we go ahead here, we choose like about, contact. So we'll go ahead and choose the about section, and we'll use that. We'll set that as a header as well. So let's go over ahead here, go to our type tool, and drag out an area right there. And we'll call that, about. And it doesn't matter what size I type it in, because if I select that, what am I going to apply to it? Go to the character style and choose header. Boop. And then if I want this frame to fit the text, I just select that frame, right click on it, choose fitting, fit frame to content. Now if I move this around, I'm like, boop, it snaps as soon as it is centered inside there. And you could decide, do you want that centered, or if you want everything lined up. You see this thing? These are called structural lines. So everything is lined off of, so it looks like really nice and left aligned. So if you didn't want things aligned like centered and stuff, then let's get our vertical guide and watch what happens when I get to that photo. Boop. It's going to, oh, it's kind of hard to see because it's a blue line on a blue line. But watch this. If I get the about and I drag this there, boop, it'll snap to that guide. Same thing with the name. If I click here and I drag that, as soon as I get to that guide, it'll snap. So now I'm aligning everything off of the left. If I want to do some paragraph, some information, we go ahead and we get the type tool. I press right at the edge of that guide and I drag that out. Maybe I want it like right ahead here and I let go. How do I fill this with placeholder text until I get the real text? Type, fill with placeholder text. And what kind of style do you think I want to apply to this? Paragraph style. So I just click anywhere, or I'm just going to highlight I'm going to highlight the paragraph and then click on resume paragraph. Then I can click off of that. So now that formatting has been, applied to that. I'm like, and if I decide, maybe that was too small, I can go ahead and I can, make changes, as I see fit. So the next thing we're going to do is we want to do contact. So we'll get our type tool, press here, drag out. I'll just type in contact. And I'm going to get my selection tool. It's selected. So what style do you think I want to apply to this? Exactly. Go to the character one. And I'll choose header. Boop. And then I can move this. Oh, and incidentally, I want to move this up, but see how this text frame is a little too big? So I'm going to right click on it, choose fitting, fit that frame to the content. I'm like, okay, great. So now I can move this up and I'm not getting in the way. And I can do the same thing, select this, I can just do up arrow to move this a bit closer, if I want. So I do contact, and then there's like the contact information. And this is, where we would put, our contact. We just create another frame to do that. And so if we look at this other one, they've got the dates on there. We could apply styles to the dates. This says 2014 to 2015. We can go ahead and we can, drag out, let me see if there's an overlap. Yeah, this one is right there at the edge. So for this one, if we needed to shrink this down a little bit, we just grab on the frame of that text and we can go out, we just click on it, and then I can go ahead and I just go to the little handles and I can shrink that in a little bit. Beep. So now I've got more space over there. Does that make sense? So if I want to, now I can go ahead and get the type tool and drag out, this would be the date. So I type in 2014 to 2015. And so if I wanted to, I can, let's see, this job title. Yeah, these are the same. If I could, I have that selected. And I can go ahead and apply a character style. Maybe I wanted the subheader one on there. But here's a cool thing. If I decide, I selected this and I applied a subheader. I'm like, oh, you know what? I want everything from the subheader style except the italic. Then all I need to do is I can make a duplicate of this. So it says subheader. I just drag it down, boop, and instead of subheader copy, let's double click on it, and we'll call this date style. And this says Arial italic. I'm going to click on basic character format. Instead of font style of italic, I'm going to choose regular, and then click OK. And so now if I click off of that, that has that date style. So if I want to start doing additional dates, check this out. I don't have to click and drag another date. I can just kind of cheat. I just hold the Option key on Mac, Alt on Windows, and I press down. And then if I'm dragging down, if I hold the Shift key, it'll go ahead and keep it straight. And then I let go, and that's where I can make those changes. And this way, let's say 2015 to 2016, and I just click off of that. So it has that same style applied to that. Does that make sense? Cool. And like these ones, like I said, I can just, when I'm doing this, if I want to line it off of that text, I can just do that, and everything's lined up. So any questions about this? So this is how easy it is to do a resume. You just start, you can start, blank. You just put some, graphics on there, and then you can either create the text inside of InDesign, or you can import it from Word. Now, like I said, when I import stuff from Word, if you already have a Word document there, you can import that. It's easy breezy. Or if it's a simple text one without formatting, you can do that as well. You decide, do you want to bring that formatting in or not. So for example, if I went ahead and I went File, and I Place, and I said place that, and I just click Open, and I'm going to say, you know what, Preserve Styles, and I go ahead and click OK, and I just click. It's going to preserve, let me go ahead here. There's Arial Bold at 18. There's, Arial Bold at 10. There's Arial Regular at 9. And so if I go ahead here and I highlight this, so this tells me this is heading bold black, and this is body text bold. And then I also have paragraph. Let me go to the paragraph. If I go ahead here, that's normal. So you can, like I said, you can bring it in with the formatting. I just prefer to do all of the formatting in InDesign because it makes it easier for me to name it. I know exactly what type of controls that I have with that. Cool. Any questions about this? Okay. So I highly recommend going through the resources ones that I have, and it takes apart the dynamics of creating a resume. Like, what is appropriate when you put that together? What are hiring managers, HR managers looking for when they look at a resume? So today we went over the mechanics of creating a creative, creative resume in InDesign. Quick side thing: if you had video and stuff, I don't have video on here, but if you wanted to add video on it, you would do the same thing. You just go File, Place, and I can go ahead and I would navigate to wherever there was, like, let's say if I go to movies and stuff, and I'm not on my computer, but if I had a video, I could select that, I can open that, and then it would place an interactive video on there, which is great if you wanted to have an interactive resume. You can also control that by, if you go to the window menu, you go to Workspace, and I said interactive for PDF. This gives me the ability to work with, I can create buttons and forms. So if you wanted to have a button on your resume, it clicks and opens, like plays something, or you can have that as well. Let's say you want it to go to a specific part of an animation or a movie, you can set up those actions here. You can also, when you're doing those media, you can create a controller in there or navigational points in there, and then when you export this, So we'll do a print one and then one for interactive. If I go File, and then we will go ahead and then we will export this. If we're just going to do a print resume, we just select print. But if we wanted to have the audio, any multimedia, those videos playing, then we would choose Adobe PDF interactive. So PDF for print, Adobe PDF for print, and Adobe PDF interactive if you're going to go to if you want to go ahead and set something. If someone wants you to email it, then PDF print is is a good way. If you want the interactive, then interactive. Any questions about that? Cool. Was this helpful? Okay, so like I said, this was the mechanics of creating a resume in InDesign. Since most of you were new, that's why I felt it important to kind of go over the workspace, familiarize yourself, and instead of having everything on one page, I tried to separate it out by placing, if we're going to do photos on a different one. So then you just look at the photos and nothing else is distracting. Then when we did the character styles, created a new document because I wanted you to see how that text is just independent of anything else. And then we put everything together inside of this document. Cool. Any questions? Yes?
So in regards to just like creativity and stuff like that, so I've seen some like very designer resumes where they use like pictures like I guess they use Illustrator and then they import the Illustrator items onto InDesign. So do they just like upload it onto InDesign?
Yeah, excellent question. So I'm not on my computer, or normally that I would just access that. But what you could do if you had an Illustrator file, you would go to the File menu, you do Place just like you would, normally, and then I can just choose, whatever it is. So let's say the same thing that I did with the photo, it's the exact same thing for Illustrator. So this is the Illustrator file. So I use Illustrator files all the time in InDesign. I can select that, and let's just say this is my Illustrator file. I click OK, and then, and then I click OK again, and then this would be my Illustrator. And sometimes people will have backgrounds. So what I do in my InDesign class, I show how to bring in Illustrator, backgrounds from Illustrator, and then we use that. We drag that in, and so let's say I want this as the background. So go ahead and I click there, and so this is my page. So let's say this is my Illustrator one, and I'm on my let me go Window, Workspace, and let me go to Essentials really quickly, and then I'm going to go to my Layers panel, and I actually want this at the very bottom. So just drag it to the very bottom of that, and let's say this is my Illustrator file. Then I'll just bring all make sure that that's selected, and I can ghost something back. And so that's how people will typically work with Illustrator files. They'll place it, they'll use it as backgrounds or texture or whatever it is, and then you can place it, you can ghost it back, you can do whatever. So instead of just having this plain white background, you got some really cool designs. Or you could, like I said, you could use Photoshop as well. You could just take, it might look a little weird, you're just like looking at the person on the resume, but you can do something, something creative, like the sky or the ocean or something like that. Oh, that's kind of cool. That looks kind of nice. Any questions? Any
Does it have to be a Photoshop?
No, it could be a JPEG as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it could be a JPEG, it could be a GIF, it could be any graphic you can place inside of InDesign.
Okay.
That gives you the advantage of it. Yes?
Can you apply the same style to different documents?
Yes, excellent question. So if I go ahead here, I go File, New, and I go New Document, and I go ahead here, and I go to a Window menu. One of the things I'm going to notice, like I go to my character styles, I'm like, hey, I've got no character styles. When you create a character style, I go ahead here, and I'm doing all of that. I don't have anything selected right now. One of the options you have when you make all these changes, actually let me go ahead here. Just start saying I do everything, and let's see, basic character format. Okay, then I go ahead and okay. One of the things that I can do, you see where it says add selected style to my current Creative Cloud library. So let me go here really quickly. Let me go to this one. So here's that header. If I go ahead right here and I click on Add Selected Style to my Creative Cloud library, I click on there and boop, it added to my Creative Cloud library. So if I was in, let's say, this other document, I'm like, oh, you know what? I have, this right here. I have that. I'm like, oh, you know what? I really want to apply that style to it. Where was that style? Oh, there's my header. I just click on it and then boop, and it automatically recognizes it. So that's the advantage of working with the Creative Cloud, is that it syncs it up to my Creative Cloud library. And what's really cool is that if I'm on a different computer and I log into my account, it's like I don't have to have, this is not my computer. I'm using, actually using Erica's. Yeah. So I would actually need to be logged into mine. And so if I'm logged in, right here, I go Help, and I can sign Erica out with her permission, and I would sign in on my account. And so then any styles that I make, like even though this is not my computer, if I launch my computer and logged in here, then I can access all of those styles. And so and I can share them. I can share these libraries, these styles with other people as well. Cool. Yes.
Can we edit the photo, or I'm already imported in the InDesign file?
Oh yeah, so if I'm here and let's say I have this photo right here. Let me go back to my layers, make sure I didn't lock it. So if I select that photo and stuff, let me go ahead and click right there. If I go ahead, I can scroll down and I can choose to edit that original. I can click on that, and that's the great thing about it being linked together, is it knows where the original one is. So let's say I want this to be a black and white, so I'll choose black and white, and let's see. Black and white, and you know what? Not only black and white, but I want to add a little bit of brown in there. Okay, great. So now I save this. I go File, Save, click OK, and then I close this. And then when I go back to Command Tab, beep, then when I go back here, see how it updated? So that's cool. So that's the great thing about having all these files linked together, because InDesign knows where they are, and you could just edit the original one. So how you used to have to do this is you'd have to delete the file, then go find the original one, open that application, open that file, make the change, save it, close that, then go back to InDesign, set your file place. Now you just like right click, edit original, make the change, and save it, and you're good to go. Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. Was this helpful? Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I hope you all learned a lot. Please go through those resources. There's a 11-minute video about creating a resume. There's also a little, I'm not going to say a step-by-step guide, but it's the one this is the one that Adobe started with. So they already start you here, and then they apply styles after the fact. I recommend going through it. However, I wanted to take you through from beginning to end, so you can see how you start from nothing. So Adobe has you start with that content already there. Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much.